Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're all having a lovely Saturday evening. It's 7:30 here in Spain. Now, as you know, I have been continuing with Spare, and I've hit the part where Harry learns to fly. Now, a lot of you may not know, but a lot of you do know, Graham is a pilot.
Yes.
So I'm going to read out the bits to you.
Okay.
And you're going to give me your thoughts. And these are just thoughts. We're not saying Harry isn't a pilot. I think Harry is a pilot in your definition.
Well, if he really did do a solo flight on his own, yeah.
I suspect he did. Right, so I'll read it out. And when you hear something that you think,
Yeah, in the UK, I'll just point out that I trained as a civilian. Okay, I paid for all my flying training. Whereas Harry trained with the military, and of course it was all given to him for free. So the military and the civilian life, there may be slight differences along the way. So what he's saying might not quite be the same as, but it should basically be the same.
well,
Okay.
just to start off so people know your credentials, what year did you learn to fly?
I qualified in '96.
Right. Where?
Shoreham.
Okay, on what?
In Sussex, in a Piper PA-28. Golf Bravo Oscar Juliet Zulu. I can even remember the number plate
That's
of it.
specific. Do you remember your first solo?
I do indeed.
Okay, we'll come to that. Right, let me read from the book, The Horse's Mouth. Before I could climb into any aircraft, however, the army would need to make sure I had the right stuff. For several weeks, they poked my body, probed my mind. Drug-free, they concluded, they seemed surprised. Also, videos to the contrary, notwithstanding, not a total thicko. So proceed. My first aircraft would be a Firefly, they said. Bright yellow, fixed wing, single prop.
Well, Firefly, that threw me a bit because there was a fairy Firefly during the war. I don't think it was any good.
Which war?
Second World War.
Oh, right,
I think. I can't really remember, but. And then it dawned on me, the Slingsby T-67, they referred to it as a Firefly. And I used to fly that a lot. In fact, that's the aeroplane I did loops over your house in.
Yeah.
And it was a really good, really fun trainer to fly. Really, really cool little plane. I loved it. So the Firefly that he's talking about must be a Slingsby T-67. And the one I was flying was a 161, which was a fixed pitch propeller. And it was like 1600cc car, for example, to put it in easy terms. But I think the ones the military used were bigger. They were like 300, like a 3 litre, and they had a variable pitch propeller. I'm not sure which version Harry would have learned to fly him. I would imagine the smaller one, because you wouldn't put a novice pilot in an aeroplane with a fixed pitch propeller.
To me, a Slingsby sounds for a first.
T-67,
I mean, normally, isn't it those high wing? What are they called?
Cessnas.
Cessna, yeah. Or a Warrior, like you did.
Yeah.
Oh well. Anyway, we'll carry on. And also, I've got my doubts as to who wrote this book, and you will see what it's going to become.
Slingsby's a trainer, though. It's a
Okay.
perfectly adequate trainer. So you could learn to fly in that.
So it's yellow. That's important you remember that part. Simple machine, according to my first flight instructor, Sergeant Major Booley. I got in and thought, really, didn't look simple to me. I turned to Booley, studied him. He wasn't simple either, short, solid, tough. He'd fought in Iraq and the Balkans and should have been a hard case, given all he'd seen and been through. But in fact, he seemed to suffer no ill effects from his tours of combat. On the contrary, he was all gentleness. He needed to be. With so much on my mind, I entered our sessions wildly distracted, and it showed. I kept expecting Booley to lose patience, begin shouting at me, but he never did. In fact, after one session, he invited me for a motorbike ride in the country. Let's go clear our heads, Lieutenant Wales. It worked like a charm.
And were they on the same motorbike? Was Harry on the back?
I don't know. And the motorbike, a gorgeous Triumph 675, was a timely...
The motorbike. So there's only one motorbike. I wonder who was on the back.
I know a lot of fellas who go, I want ride bitch. Harry's no one's bitch except Megan's
Harry's
bitch.
the Sergeant Major's bitch.
Anyway, a timely reminder of what I was after in these flight lessons: speed, power and freedom. He's actually learning because he says he's going to be a helicopter pilot in the army and fly an Apache, if I've recalled rightly.
That's what he claimed.
And
Tail gunner.
this is what we're going to examine: how long it took him, and what your opinion as a pilot. Okay, we'll get there. Then he says he was followed by the press or something like that.
On his motorbike.
Yeah, something like that.
On the back of the motorbike.
After a period of acclimatising to the Firefly's cockpit, becoming familiar with the control panel, I finally took her up. On one of the first flights together, with no warning, Booley threw the aircraft into a stall. I felt the left wing dip, a sickening feeling of disorder, of entropy, and then...
What's
I
entropy?
don't know I've never heard that word before. And then after several seconds that felt like decades, he recovered the aircraft and levelled the wings. I stared at him. What in the absolute? Was this an aborted suicide attempt? No, he said gently, this was the next stage in my training. Countless things can go wrong in the air, he explained. And he needed to show me what to do, but also how to do it. Stay cool. Our next flight, he pulled...
Can I just
Yeah.
point something out there? Stalling an aeroplane, okay? An aeroplane has to fly at a certain speed, okay? And if it goes too slow, one of the wings will stop flying first. And in his case, he said the left wing, which sounds right. And then what happens is it's like sycamore leaf effect. So one wing's not flying and the other one is, so it goes into a spin. And it's quite simple to get out of a spin. It's not, as long as you've got enough height. But when you're coming into land, it's crucial to fly the aeroplane as slow as you can, but not go into a stall. So this is why they teach you this.
Right. Our next flight, he pulled the same stunt, but this time he didn't recover the aircraft. As we went spinning and pirouetting towards the earth, he said, "It's time." For what? For you to do it. He looked at the controls. I grabbed them, stuck the boot in, regained the aircraft in what felt like the nick of time. I looked at Booley, waited for congratulations. Nothing, barely a reaction. Over time, Booley would do this again and again. Cut the power. Now, I think when he says cut the power, he means people...
Throttle back.
Throttle back, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like his description of spin recovery, because you wouldn't teach a pilot spin recovery before he'd gone solo. Okay, it's not even in the syllabus for the private pilot's license. The military may do things different. You'd have to ask a military pilot that, but spin recovery before your first solo, I don't think so.
I'm thinking as well that he's told these stories at home and Megan has heard them, and I think Megan is describing it because there's a lot wrong. There is a lot wrong. It gets worse.
My instructors would not teach me spin recovery until I was a qualified pilot, and then I had to nag them to do spinning, and they reluctantly took me up in a 150, 150.
And we're talking,
like
he's in an aeroplane here, in case anyone hasn't...
me spinning. And the 150, you had to hold it in the spin, because the minute you relax the controls into the neutral position, the thing just pulled out on its own. I mean, you could have just let go of everything and it'd recover itself. Not sure about the Slingsby, because I've never spun a Slingsby.
Right, okay. You've thrown them about the sky.
I have thrown them about loads, but I've never put them into a spin deliberately.
Yeah, cut the power, put us into free fall. As the creaking metal and roaring white nose. Now, I don't know if these military Slingsbys are yellow and white, because we were yellow a minute ago, now we're white. Just a little.
Why would the metal be creaking? I mean, it doesn't sound good, does it?
I don't know.
And the nose went white. The yellow nose went white.
Yeah. Oh, I see. The aeroplane turned pale. Maybe. The white nose of the stilled engine became...
Oh, the stilled engine. Now, that's unusual. He had engine failure, had the propeller stopped. Is that what he means? Because that never happens.
Or was the guy turning it off?
You never shut the engine down in flight. Never, ever. Okay, you don't do it unless you're an idiot.
Okay. So white roaring white noise of the stilled engine became deafening. He turned calmly to his left. It's time. Time. You have control. I have control. After I restored the power...
Can I just stop you there? That's a classic. That's what instructors do. You've got dual controls in the aeroplane. Very clear instructions. Instructor says, you have control. Okay, so he's telling you that you have control. You've got your hands on the stick. And you have to repeat back to him, I have control. So no one's in any doubt of who's in control. Because you don't want two people fighting for control over the aircraft. And then if the instructor wants to take control back off you, he'll say, I have control. And then you have to let go of everything and you have to repeat, you have control. This is drills that are obviously identical to civilian and military. So that is verifiable. I'll verify that.
Although a lot of people say you have, I have.
Absolutely true.
After I restored the power, after we returned to the base safely, there was never any fanfare, not even much chatter. No medals in Booley's cockpit for simply doing your job. At last, one clear morning, after a routine handful of circuits over the airfield, we landed softly and Booley jumped out as if the Firefly were on fire. What's the matter? It's time, Lieutenant Wales. Time? For you to do your solo. Oh, okay.
Sounds right.
Up I went, in brackets, after first making sure my parachute was strapped on, close brackets.
But we never had parachutes.
It must be a military
civilian world, but military, yeah, the military do have parachutes.
I did 1 or 2 circuits round the airfield, talking to myself all the while.
No, I'll stop you there. 1 or 2 circuits. First solo is 1 circuit. Okay, and you're supposed to just do 1 circuit, which is actually what you've just been doing all morning for the last 3/4 of an hour with your instructor, and you take off, go around the circuit and you land. That's your first solo. You don't do 1 or 2, okay, unless something changes and you have to do
it. Sounds like
because any time when you're coming into land, you can say, I'm not happy with this, and you power up and you go around. That's what you're supposed to do if you're not happy with it. You don't push a bad position for landing. So, but he would know. He would know if he did 1 or 2 circuits. You just know.
Your first solo would be memorable.
First solo is for me, certainly the first solo. I was a pilot from that moment, even though I wasn't qualified and I was very inexperienced. From that moment, I was a pilot. Okay, and you go on to other ratings, you qualify, you get night ratings, IMC ratings, you get multi-engine ratings, but nothing ever beats the first solo. So he would know. He wouldn't think, oh, was it 1 circuit or was it 2? Oh, I can't remember. It's like not remembering the kind of plane you were in.
But I have no doubt that Harry actually flew a Slingsby, if that's what it was, at that airfield with that guy. My doubt is in who wrote this fucking book. And we know that Mo Ringer dude did, and maybe he don't know nothing about flying, and maybe Harry was, I don't know, unconscious
Telling
that
him all
day.
about it, and he wrote it.
And maybe Megan had to fill in some gaps, because I heard she was taking cookies and lemonade to Mo Ringer every day, just to check up on him. She never interfered with the book.
Okay, carry on.
Okay, we'll carry on to Harry's first solo.
1 or 2 circuits.
Yeah, I did 1 or 2 circuits, talking to myself all the way. Full power, keep the wheel on the white line, pull up, slowly dip the nose, don't stall, turn in the climb, level off, okay, now you're downwind, radio the tower, check your ground markers, pre-landing checks, reduce power, start to descend in the turn, there you go, steady now, roll out there, line it up, 3-degree flight path, get the nose on the piano keys, request clearance to land, point the aircraft where you want it to land.
I'll just stop you there slightly.
That's his entire description.
There are lights on the approach when you're coming into land, and the lights show you a 3-degree approach, okay, angle. There's two red ones and 2 white ones. Okay, if you see 2 reds and 2 whites, you're on the 3-degree approach angle. If you see 4 whites, you're too high, you're above the 3-degree angle, and if you see 4 reds, you're too low. Now, I never used to come in and stick to the 3 degree because if you lost the engine while you're coming in, you can't glide to the runway. I always came in higher, but that's just mine. But I mean, I don't think a student being trained at first solo standard would even be aware of the vases. You know, they might be in the military, they might drum it into them in the military to follow the 3D, but I would never teach any of my students to follow that. I'd want to be high, I'd want at least 4 whites or like 1 red at the most. You know, I wouldn't want to go to 2 reds because, like I said, if you have an engine failure, you won't make it to, depending on the aeroplane you're flying, you won't make it to the runway. Nice to come in high because you can trade that altitude for distance.
Okay. I made an uneventful 1 bounce landing and taxied off the runway. To the average person, it would have looked like the most mundane flight in the history of aviation. To me, it was one of the most wonderful moments of my life.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Was I a pilot now?
Yes, he
Okay.
was.
Hardly, but I was on my way. I jumped out, marched up to Booley. My God, I wanted to high-five him.
Very proud moment, yeah.
Take him out for drinks, but it was out of the question. Normally, I remember instructors, whenever someone had done a solo, they'd take him in the bar and say, this person's just done their solo, and people would clap and they'd say, have a pint, or what do you want to drink? And
well done, congratulations, all
that
that.
would be,
Yeah.
I remember that a lot happening at Shoreham. That would be normal. So,
yeah.
I mean, he must have been quite a strict instructor then, especially with old Harry. Oh, poor Harry, missed out on that. The one thing I absolutely didn't want to say, I didn't want to say goodbye to him, but that was what needed to happen next. Now that I'd soloed, I needed to embark on the next phase of my training, as Booley was so fond of saying, it was time. Oh,
So why would he lose his instructor at that point? I mean, this is at the beginning. You've done 1 solo. Why would you not
he's not going
continue?
He's building towards training to fly a helicopter. So I'm not quite sure why he went up in a fixed wing at all. Why not?
Well,
why didn't they send him up in a robo?
They would. They'd start you off in a fixed wing.
Would
I can see them starting you off in a fixed wing, but then once you've done your fixed wing licence, move on to helicopters.
I personally can't see why they didn't put him in a flight sim. I mean, especially Harry.
Didn't have him in those days.
Just to be on the
not
safe
as
side.
good as
Oh
they were.
yeah, of course. No, they wouldn't, would they? Because I always think of him as a baby.
They did have really basic training
they were quite shit
in those
weren't they?
days, but they were really shit.
Okay, off to RAF Shawbury, and discovered that helicopters are much more complex than
I'll
fireflies.
stop you there. Because why would you go from first solo to helicopters at Shawbury? Why wouldn't you finish your training in a fixed wing and then go to... Because you've got a lot to do. I mean, once you've flown your first solo, that's not the end. You're not a pilot. You haven't got your licence. You've got to do all kinds of navigation, cross-country, all kinds of things. I mean, in my day, we had to pass a navigation flight test and then a general flight test.
I might have to do a second video, because you know this afternoon when I read this out to you, I read on about 4 or 5 pages, and he didn't learn anything about navigation until they put him in the big one. What was it?
Apache?
Yeah.
He wouldn't need to navigate. The pilot would know how to do that.
No, he's the pilot apparently, flying round Big Ben and everything.
He wasn't.
Flying
I
round Big
only
Ben.
ever saw him in Afghanistan sitting in the front.
No, apparently.
And that's the gunner.
According to this book, he flew round, he did his solo round Big Ben.
Bollocks.
Oh, well, we might have to do a video too, because my videos are not that long, you know, and there's a lot about the flying.
All right.
Right, so he did the fixed wing at RAF Barkston Heath, and now he's at Shawbury.
I don't know where Barkston Heath is, but...
I don't.
Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. He's done his first solo, now he's on to Shawbury for
So he's discovered everything's
helicopters.
much more complicated on a rotary. Yeah, I think so. Even the pre-flight checks were more extensive. I stared at these next few lines. Well, I've just got my doubts who wrote this. I stared at the galaxy of toggles and switches and thought, how am I going to memorise all this?
Well, the first thing the instructor teaches you when you get in an aeroplane for the first time, it's called a trial lesson. You're met with loads of dials on the dashboard, and they say, right, that looks a lot, that looks very confusing. Let me show you which ones not to bother looking at. Don't look at any of these, don't look at any of them, don't look at them, don't look at them. Focus on these 6 in the middle here in your rev counter. Now, helicopter will be much the same because there'll be a lot of radio, nav, comms, all kinds of stuff that you just put right out your head because initially you just want to focus on the basic ones. So the first thing your instructor will say to you when you get in is ignore all these, ignore all them, ignore the others, ignore them. This is what you need to focus on, just these simple ones here.
Okay.
Which he failed to mention.
Yeah, this is what I mean. He simplified the whole book and made it kind of babyish.
Well, once you can fly the helicopter, they start introducing you into different things. You know.
Now this next paragraph.
Equipment on board.
Oh no, we've got one. Somehow I did it slowly. Under the watchful eyes of my two new instructors, Sergeant Majors Lazzle and Mitchell, I learned them all. Now this next paragraph, I personally find I have big doubts about this.
Okay.
In no time we were lifting off, rotors beating the frothy clouds.
Bollocks. No time you were lifting off. In no time we were lifting off.
And they were
in the clouds. You do not fly in cloud in helicopters, right? You don't do it. Nobody does it. No one. Okay, unless you've got an IR, and nobody's got an IR who flies helicopters, okay? They don't do it unless you go into oil rigs. It's a serious qualification. Anyone who flies into cloud in helicopters has a good chance of dying, okay? That's why they keep away from clouds. They do not go anywhere near clouds, especially with a student pilot. If you're a more qualified, more experienced helicopter pilot and you want to do some IMC cloud flying, I mean, whoa, you're going into serious territory there. That's how helicopter pilots get killed. Okay, no one does it.
It is interesting. It was the frothy part that I had my doubts.
Frothy clouds.
We went up into the frothy clouds in the sky.
I'm not saying helicopters don't finish up accidentally in cloud, because it can happen. It's happened to us. But you never, ever deliberately fly into clouds. That's what I'm saying.
Plus, I would have thought it takes a little bit of time, from the ground to the fluffy cloud. Right, let's keep going.
Yes.
Perhaps we're nitpicking. Do you think,
Perhaps
Graham, or not?
Yeah.
And then the purest form of flying in many ways. I agree with him on that.
Helicopters are good fun. Don't get me wrong, but very, very expensive. But go on.
Now, this next sentence, you've got a problem with it, and I've got a different problem with it. So
Okay.
you will tell everyone your problem first,
Right.
and then I'll tell everyone my problem. The first time we ascended straight vertical, I thought, I was born for this. So
Right, well, it sums up a vision of the helicopter just going straight up and up and up and up and up. And I'm not saying helicopters can't do that, but you'd never do that with a student in. That's a very dangerous manoeuvre, actually, because they have a thing called the avoidance curve, okay? What you would do with a helicopter, and I'm going to use a prop,
Okay.
what you do with a helicopter is you just lift off the ground into the hover, and you would probably stay 10, certainly no more than 20 feet, and you'd hold it in the hover. You would not go straight up like this. A more experienced helicopter pilot could do that, but he or she is aware of the problem, because if you're going straight up, you've got no forward speed. So if your engine fails, you die. Come down with a big heavy bump anyway. So it's called the avoidance curve. There's a big cone, right, that you don't go in. So what a helicopter will do, it will pull up into the hover, you'll do all your checks, you'll hold the aircraft pointing the right way into wind or whatever. And when you're happy that everything's okay, because if it's not okay, you can just put it back down again and, oh, what's wrong? Oh, this and I'm not happy with it. But anyway, if you're happy with everything and you're in the hover, you then transition to forward flight. So you tip the stick forward, okay, so the nose will go down and the helicopter will go off down the runway, and you get transitional lift, a thing called transitional lift, which as it goes forward, it generates lift and speed. And you've seen all the helicopters, they just lift off and they go forwards like that. And especially if you're training student pilots, that's exactly what you'll do. You will not go up and up and up and up, unless you're showing off to a student, and it's not a good thing to show off to students. Because the student might want to go and do that themselves and show off, and then they might come a cropper, mightn't they? There's a lot of things can go wrong with a helicopter, so when you're teaching students, you teach them the basic, safe as possible methods, and into the hover, forward transitional lift. That's
Yeah.
how you go. That's how it. You don't go in beating floppy clouds and things, fluffy clouds. Don't do any of that. Anyway, carry on.
I remember Graham taught me to fly helicopter on the flight sim. Oh my God, it was a horrific experience. But I did it. But there was one point he left me and I kept crashing in Shoreham off the beach. And he said, show me, oh, that's right, it was all recorded so you could watch it back. And I was not moving forward. So I was trying to hover at like 200 feet.
If you're at a high hover and the aircraft's not moving, you could lose it very easily. So,
yeah.
A more experienced helicopter pilot could do that. But you're certainly not a student. You never do that with a student. And Shawbury is, if I remember, I've been to Shawbury many times. You look up Shrewsbury in Shropshire. It's north-east. It's about 5 minutes helicopter flight from Shrewsbury, north-east. It's just there.
Now, the problem that I have with this sentence is that it's implying, now, everyone's first, if you've ever been in a helicopter, first experience in a helicopter is awesome. It's a really unusual sensation and it is magical. And that's what he's depicting here. That this is a new experience for him.
Yeah.
That he's like, oh, I was born for this. Fuck off. He's a member of the Windsors. You telling me from when he was a little kid he had not been getting in and out of helicopter. He don't know what it feels like to be in a
family jump in and out of helicopters.
I never saw Megan go in a helicopter, so again, I don't know if Mo Ringer went in a helicopter. It sounds to me again like the fluffy clouds or floppy clouds or whatever they are. It just doesn't feel authentic, this book, and
He was at Shawbury. I remember seeing the video at the time of him and William sat in a hangar. They were taking the piss out of each other, so I've got no doubt that he was there.
My doubts
and they would have done some helicopter training before they gave up on him.
My doubts are not in what we've read so far about Harry.
I don't believe he's qualified. I honestly don't. If he did qualify, they gave it to him.
Well, it's going to get a lot worse, and there is an awful lot more of it. So I think we're probably going to do this in 2 parts. But okay. I'll go on a bit further. I don't doubt Harry. I doubt who wrote this stupid book. Who's filled in these fluffy clouds? I mean, they've made him look like a global fool, really. Right, where were we up to? The dodgy sentence, weren't we? But flying the helicopter, I learned, wasn't the hard part. Hovering was.
Yes, it is.
At least 6 long lessons were devoted to this one task.
More than that, mate, more than that.
Which sounded easy at first and quickly came to seem impossible. In fact, the more you practiced hovering, the more impossible it seemed. I disagree. Yes, hovering is difficult. I found hovering difficult and landing on the H. But you get it after about 2 or 3 hours.
6 hours. 6 hours it took you, and it's on average it's 6 hours, and you don't fly the helicopter anywhere. You don't need to go anywhere. You just need to hover it and hover taxi around the airfield. That's the thing, because you've got 3 controls. You've got 3 controls. 3 controls. And what they normally do is the instructor will take you up and they'll say, get hold of the joystick. And the joystick, okay, is the cyclic control, and that controls the disc, because they call it the disc. And you've got a swash plate on there. So if you push that stick forward, the whole disc tilts forwards and the helicopter goes forwards. Okay? Centralise it stays central. Pull it back and it'll tilt backwards. The helicopter will go backwards, similarly right and left. And they only let you hold the stick. The instructor does all the rest. Okay, so you're cyclicking. Oh, I'm cyclicking today. So you're there cyclicking away. And then the next day or the next time you go up in a helicopter, they say, right, it's collective time now, which is like a big handbrake lever that you raise and lower. This is the up and down lever. So you raise it very, very slowly, the helicopter goes up. You lower it very slowly, the helicopter comes down, and he's doing the cyclic then now. So you're only working one control. Okay, up, down,
and then there's
up,
rudder
down.
pedals.
And then you've got rudder pedals on the floor, because as you go up, depending on which way the disc spins, because the different helicopters will go one way and others will go the other way. As the helicopter goes up, it will turn.
Yeah, just
so now
yours.
It's your turn to do the rudder pedal. So when that guy lifts off, you've got to keep the helicopter straight. So you've got to either push right rudder in or left rudder in and keep it straight.
And it's like...
And then your brain has now got to compute all 3 of those together because you've got to do all 3. And for your brain to pick up all three, it takes about 6 hours to crack it.
Yeah, and the other thing is it's very slight movement, and the
very
natural
small
thing when
movements, very
someone
small.
starts, when the helicopter
Yeah.
goes forward, they go whoa, and then they've lost it. It's off all over the place.
Massive. The trick to it is very, very small movements.
Yeah.
Very small. Helicopter's going left, you go right. Whereas if you go right, you go whoa.
I am surprised at him a bit because he would have been into gaming and he must have had remote control toys.
Yeah, but you can't fly the helicopter with a gamepad, can you? Maybe he can. Maybe they should put gamepads in helicopters.
Graham, those
and
little
you'll crack it.
remote control helicopters, I went to a model shop and the guy could get it to go upside down and right to his nose and stuff. And, kids can do this
They
stuff.
can. They grow up with a gamepad, the Game Boy, whatever they call it.
He refers to the problem as hover monkeys. I suppose his instructor might have given him that idea.
I've never heard that expression.
No, the main reason was a phenomenon called hover monkeys. Just above the ground, a helicopter falls prey to a fiendish confluence of factors: airflow, downdraft, gravity.
It gets a bit wobbly.
Yeah, he says first it
At
wobbles,
times.
then it rocks, then it pitches and yaws as if invisible monkeys are hanging from both skids, yanking it. To land the helicopter, you have to shake off those hover monkeys, and the only way to do it is to ignore them. Well,
I struggled a lot when you got an H in a circle to land on. You're hovering above the H, then it waffles off to the left, it waffles off to the right, then you're trying to get it back again, and it goes backwards and it goes forwards, and you think, well, I can put this thing down, okay, nice and safe, but putting it on the H is very difficult. So I found that coming in, just keep coming in, keep aiming for the spot, and put it down nice and gently. You don't slam it into this. You've got to keep moving forwards. I found moving forwards all the time was much easier than sitting there hovering.
Yeah, because you drift.
Because you do get a bit of a waffle. So what you're saying there isn't wrong.
Yeah.
I never heard it called hover monkeys though,
but... easier said, time and time again, the hover monkeys got the better of me, and it was the small consolation that they also got the better of every other pilot training with me. We talked among ourselves about these little bastards, the invisible gremlins.
But at no time has he mentioned what type of helicopter it is, has he?
No, I don't think he has, actually.
Well,
That is interesting, boy.
RAF Central Flying School, I mean, at Shrewsbury would have particular helicopters for basic training in. And
now, I think Harry would remember something like
he
that.
remembered the Firefly. He didn't remember the T-67 Slingsby bit, but he remembered the Firefly.
Yeah, but you're...
Well, you would know, as a pilot, you would know this shit.
Again, you're blaming Harry, and I'm saying I don't think Harry wrote this book.
But what kind of helicopter was it? I know for a fact.
I think Harry would know what kind of helicopter it was.
When I saw the documentary on the TV, William and Harry were sat in the hangar.
That's right, he comes to that. He actually comes to that.
And William was converting onto a different type of helicopter. He'd been flying air sea rescue helicopters, which was the Sea King. Okay,
He was training. He was
transferring onto the Griffin helicopter, which looks very, very similar to the old Vietnam Huey helicopter. Looks the same to most people. It's obviously a much more modern version of it, but he was converting onto that type. Because when you pass your helicopter license, you can only fly the helicopter you pass your test in. Can't fly anything else.
Yeah.
So if you want to fly a Griffin helicopter, you've got to do what they call a type rating. And then you've got to pass a test. It's about 6 hours. And then you take a test in that. And then they'll put that type in your license as well. So now you can fly 2 types of helicopter. That's how helicopters work.
Yeah, he comes to that because he lived in a cottage with William, just the two of them.
Right.
And he refers to that as being a great time. And then he has like this, it's either a false memory or someone else has written this book. Because when they were joking in front of the cameras, and William was like, oh, Harry snores and he's a ginger. And he went, oh, William's bald and all that. And they were joshing about.
Yeah.
Harry, and you could see they were having fun.
Well,
they were joking. In this book, there suddenly flicks into a mechanism. But deep in my heart, he hurt me when he said I snored. And it's... I'm really having my doubts about how he writes. I think we're going to leave it at the 34 minutes. And then if people want us to do another one, and we can carry on, because we might even have to do 3.
Because I personally don't know what kind of helicopters they train basic helicopter pilots on in the RAF. I don't know.
I never thought of that, but you would.
See,
You would. I mean, for example,
You would know if it was correlated, semi-correlated, or fully correlated. Because fully correlated would be the easiest one to learn to fly.
I had 3 helicopter lessons in an actual helicopter years ago.
Robo R22, wasn't it?
And I will never forget the type, Robinson R22, and it was frightening. And I did it. I thought, I'll try and learn to fly helicopters because then I might overcome my. I don't exactly have a fear of flying, but I'm not keen on it.
I thought you got your pilot's license years ago.
Don't.
Don't go there.
Don't. Oh my God. Right, anyway, that's enough. Thank you very much for your expertise, Graham. We'll carry on with it, but only if the people want. And in private, we'll carry on with it, and we'll rip him to pieces.
I don't believe he's got a helicopter pilot's license.
I have my doubts. I mean, when we get to the Apache bit,
he clearly has got one, but I don't think he earned it. I think he just gave it him and just didn't let him fly helicopters. He could be the co-pilot.
I mean, it gets to a bit where he flies round Big Ben and past the London Eye, and he flies over Granny's Buckingham Palace. And
I bet he had Sergeant Major Mickey in there with him as well, just in case he fucked up.
I get the impression from the Apache he sits down low somewhere and someone else sits somewhere else.
The guy in the front works the gun and the missiles and things.
Right. No, he's claiming he was flying that completely. He's claiming. Well, we shall come to that. And
he's got no excuse not to, because as the Prince of Wales' brother, the cash flow would be unlimited training.
Well, it would actually.
So the only reason he would fail is because he's a knacker, okay? So he's got no reason to fail. I think he fluffed his way through the course and they gave him the qualification just because he had his wings when he got married to Meghan Markle. So they've obviously given it to him, but why isn't he flying helicopters then? Why wasn't he flying helicopters? Because he fluffed it, that's why.
There was another part earlier in the book, which I'm not going to go back and read.
Just my opinion, by the way. I don't know for a fact. He might be a really good helicopter pilot, but I doubt it.
Well, there's someone in the army, some commanding officer in the army he'd gone to dinner with, said, if you want to go back to Afghanistan or wherever, why don't you be a helicopter pilot? And it's like Meghan wrote the paragraph, because he says, oh, Grandpa, Pa, Willie and Uncle Andrew all have helicopter pilot licenses. And I thought, yeah, I go along with that. What about Auntie Sarah? The Duchess of York has a helicopter pilot.
Someone paid for a helicopter pilot's license for her as a wedding present when she got married to Andrew.
And she has written children's books about Budgie the helicopter.
Did. I think she trained on a Robinson R22.
Oh my God, she's a talented woman then, because there's a bloody awful helicopter. It's
like
really
a toy helicopter. It's like
a
radio control
Anyway,
helicopter.
my point is, it's like...
Wouldn't get me in one.
You're missing the point of a lot of this, because you're just thinking about this from a pilot's point of view. Meghan may not have cared or been interested in Auntie Sarah being a helicopter pilot. But Harry would definitely know Auntie Sarah's a helicopter pilot, and I wouldn't mind betting Catherine may well be a helicopter pilot. We just don't know. Princess Anne could be a helicopter pilot. Sophie could be. There could be many other members of the family. But it's like someone who doesn't really know the family that well, that just lists Philip, Charles, William and Andrew.
And bows like this.
Well, I think that we shall bow out, and thank you very much for listening.
Good night, and may your God go with you.